domination. We stand in solidarity with the Republic of Argentina in its just claim for its sovereign rights over the Malvinas, the South Georgia and South Sandwich Islands, and the surrounding maritime areas. We reiterate our commitment to peace in Colombia. We are convinced that a political solution and a dialogue between the parties is the appropriate way to achieve it. We also call for an end to foreign interference in Syria and full respect for its sovereignty and territorial integrity, while we support the search for a peaceful and negotiated solution to the situation imposed on that sister nation. We call for a just, comprehensive, all-encompassing and lasting solution to the Middle East conflict, which includes the end of the Israeli occupation of the usurped Palestinian territories and the exercise of the inalienable right of the Palestinian people to build its own state within the pre-1967 borders and with East Jerusalem as its capital. We condemn the unilateral coercive measures imposed against the Islamic Republic of Iran. We reaffirm our unswerving solidarity with the Saharan people. We strongly condemned the unilateral and unjust sanctions against the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. We reiterate our unwavering support to the One China principle and oppose any attempt to harm the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the People's Republic of China, as well as any interference in its internal affairs. We reject the attempts to expand NATO's presence up to the Russian borders. The interference in Russia's affairs with regard to its sovereignty, and the imposition of unilateral and unjust sanctions against that country. We call for an end to foreign interference in the internal affairs of the Republic of Belarus, and reiterate our solidarity with President Alexander Lukashenko and the brotherly people of Belarus. The United Nations cannot ignore the lessons learned in Afghanistan. It took 2 decades of occupation, a toll of thousands of deaths, 10 million displaced, and billions of dollars in costs, which turned into profits for the military-industrial complex. It took all that to reach the conclusion that terrorism cannot be prevented or fought with bombs, that occupation only leads to destruction, and that no country has the right to impose its will on sovereign nations. Afghanistan is not an isolated case. It became obvious that wherever the United States intervenes, instability, death, and hardship increase, leaving behind long-lasting scars. Mr. President, we reaffirm Cuba's determination to continue speaking the truth in a transparent fashion, however much this might be upsetting to some, defending the principles and values we believe in, supporting just causes, confronting violations as much as we have confronted foreign aggressions, colonialism, racism, and apartheid, and struggling ceaselessly for the greatest possible justice, prosperity, and development of our peoples, who deserve a better world. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Cuba for the statement just made. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency João Manuel Gonzalez Lourenço, President of the Republic of Angola. I request the protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency João Manuel Gonzalez Lourenço, President of the Republic of Angola, and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Your Excellency, Mr. Abdullah Shahid, President of the 76th Session of the United Nations General Assembly, Heads of State and Government, Mr. Secretary General of the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen. The fact that I can be on this podium to congratulate you in person on your election is a sign of progress in how we are dealing with the COVID-19 virus. we have not yet won the battle against the SARS-CoV-2 virus, but must note that we are overcoming the fears, uncertainties, and the feeling of powerlessness of a year ago, and gradually returning to normal life, with all the necessary precautions and a sense of responsibility that is required from all of us. The fight against COVID-19 and its new and frightening variants goes on, and only our combined efforts, without distinctions between rich and poor or based on other types of social categories, is the only way forward for us to fight this pandemic with outcomes that meet our population's expectations of a full return to normal life. We have seen an increased global conviction that the possibility of achieving this goal is real, as vaccines are developed and introduced by the international scientific community with admirable and commendable speed, with the larger purpose of preserving the human species, which is threatened by the COVID-19 pandemic. It is therefore urgent that we establish, in practical terms, a general understanding that solidarity and streamlined procedures to access vaccines are the only way to lead the world to victory in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, with the broadest possible immunization of the inhabitants of our planet. It is shocking to see the disparity between some nations and others with respect to availability of vaccines. These disparities allow for third doses to be given in some cases, while in other cases, as in Africa, the vast majority of the population has not even received the first dose. The United Nations must discuss and adopt decisions that are favorable toward the release of vaccine production patents, so that they may be produced for an even larger number of countries, making them more accessible to all. The pandemic that we face is global in nature and thus accentuated the link and interdependence among nations. For this reason, the COVID-19 vaccine must be recognized as a good for all community, with universal and open access to allow for wider production and equitable distribution on a global scale. Excellencies, all negative effects and consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic in other places also had a strong impact on the economic and social life in the Republic of Angola. Nonetheless, we were able to act quickly, aggressively, and decisively to contain the spread of the contamination on a scale that allowed us to keep the levels of contagion within the limits of our health structure's response capacity. Yet, an assessment of losses resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic to our national economy provides us with distressing results for which we are now seeking solutions to help mitigate them and relieve the suffering of our population. We have relied on the support and efforts that merit our full appreciation, as they provide us with some measure of relief in terms of our financial responsibilities toward our creditors. This allows us to have some capacity to tend to our enormous and multiple needs. In this context of significant degradation in the living conditions of our population and our economic and social fabric, we must engage in deep reflection to find long-lasting solutions that may serve as the basis for rebuilding our economies, which have suffered the most severe impacts from this worldwide health crisis. Excellencies, the Republic of Angola has made major efforts to contribute to peace and stability in Central Africa, in the Great Lakes region, and other parts of our continent. Our sensitivity with respect to issues of peace and war is the result of our long internal conflict that lasted for several decades, which gives us a clear perspective on the importance of seeking solutions for disputes through dialogue and understanding between conflicting parties. We have sought to share our successful Angolan experience with other nations, with the conviction that our action, if well understood, will surely lead to favorable outcomes in ending conflicts and re-establishing peace in some of the affected African countries. There still remain several conflicts in different regions